Hey everyone, I'm Mary Beth McAndrews, and I am here today with Jenna Kanell and Catherine Corcoran, the two stars of the original Terrifier film. And today we are doing an interview, but we're doing something a little bit different than what you usually see on Dread Central. We're going to pepper in some trivia questions about Terrifier to see how much they remember about the film, the original. Um, Hello to the both of you. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today with Terrifier returning back into theaters. So, in coming onto this project, did either of you ever expect Terrifier to like gain the amount of attention that it has? Like, did you ever think for a moment that this movie would kind of become a cult classic? And I guess, Jenna, I'll start with you for the question.
I absolutely never thought that this would be the thing that followed me around for the rest of my life. No. Because I had already done several indie movies prior
Yeah.
to filming this, and most of them never got seen. Some of them still have not been seen. Some of them, the ones I did afterwards, never even got released. So, you never know with indies, it's a total gamble.
Yeah.
And it could either be the sort of thing that no one sees, it doesn't even get finished, or it could be this somehow.
Yeah. And Catherine, what about you? I mean,
Yeah, it was the same experience. I think that's like the biggest misconception I think around this stuff is like
yeah.
when Jen and I started this, they had to work around us, and Damien was really gracious to do that. But Jen and I were both on other projects at the time and had
Yeah.
done a bunch of indies and had kind of been doing things. So they
Yeah.
had to shoot around our schedule.
We were both on studio films at the time. Like I
Yeah,
think our first studio films were basically at
yeah,
the same time.
Oh.
yeah, both of us. So actually, yeah, that's right. You were on Bye Bye Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was on this film called Chuck. That was like a boxing drama with like this crazy, crazy cast. And they had to shoot
Wild.
around us. Yeah. So it was like this like little thing that we were kind of just doing on the side and like had no idea what we were really making or what we were doing. But I will say that Jen and I immediately became really good friends on it. And that has been one of the coolest things that has followed us, regardless of like how the film has followed us. I think our friendship is like kind of my favorite thing about it.
Oh,
I love that. Well, and I feel like
very
I hear
cool.
so much like, you go a movie and then you don't really ever talk again. So it's so nice to hear that a friendship blossomed and came out of that and you were able
Oh yeah.
because
We talk on
because
the
it's
phone fairly regularly for like an hour at a time.
Like a
At
little
least.
too much. Like, okay, I know you
Yeah.
have a life. Sorry.
Yeah.
the killer clowns bring us together, question mark, I guess.
Trauma bonded
Totally.
by
Trauma bonded. Oh my gosh. Okay,
That's
so
right.
I'm gonna hit you both with your first trivia question here out the gate. So, in which film did Art the Clown make his first debut appearance? Do either of you know?
In the short film Terrifier.
yeah.
Yeah, ding ding ding.
Oh, I was gonna say All Hallows Eve. You were so like I forgot there's the short film Terror.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's two. There's two
There's two of
films.
them. That's right.
I found that out today. Um, but so I'm curious. So, Catherine, you wrote this really awesome article for Daily Beast about your experience on the film, particularly that, like, that is now the infamous hacksaw scene. And I wanted to hear a little bit more from you. First, like the logistics of just doing like that dangerous stunt, because you write about that in your article about that. But then, two, I just kind of love to hear more about like how that being in that scene has followed you as an actor and how that has like impacted you professionally and personally, and like what that has been like to be someone talked about, but not as a person, if that sounds right.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never think about it like that, to be honest, it's interesting. I know that people talk about like this scene. That's funny that you say that they do talk about the scene and not about the performance as much. And
Yeah.
that's such an interesting thing, that I think is unique to this experience.
Yeah.
That typically, you're not identified by one scene, you're identified, by your work on a project. And
Yeah.
but I don't it doesn't bother me so much in like in that regard. I think what I am proud about in terms of the scene, regardless of the logistics, which Damien and I have openly talked about, is that it challenges again like this kind of depths of what it is to be human, and to
Yeah.
be dynamic and powerful and assertive. And that's really what I talk about in the article. And horror has always done
Yeah.
that, women who typically lead with like their sexuality or their strength are often like brutally punished for that. And that is what great horror does, is it takes what happens in real life and talks about it. Women are punished all the time, punished, you know, in various ways, both personally and societally, for just being biologically female. And I think what the scene does is it strips, you know, this character who is pretty dynamic and powerful, a little silly, and probably crossed some boundaries herself, but never in a way that was, you know, hurtful to anybody. You know, she's brutally punished for her confidence and her strength by the very physical thing that makes her female. And then on top of that, you have her best friend, who they clearly have this really, you know, special relationship. She has to watch her get stripped of that power, and that's what makes that really, really upsetting. And it's funny because we, in thinking about re-releases, I remember when we watched it at Lincoln Center, which was really the only time that we ever all saw it together in theaters. I remember sitting in the back, and the theater was sold out, which was also pretty wild for like Lincoln Center, where the ballets, you had like, you know, this movie there, and everyone's screaming, going through the scene, and then afterwards there was just this like silence, which doesn't really happen in a horror audience. And someone did break the silence with a joke, which everyone started applauding afterwards. But the fact that everyone was just silent afterwards, I think showcases like the power of what they just had to sit through, similar to what Jenna's character has to just sit through in the film. And I think that's such a cool thing. You know, it's very rare that you have that ability as filmmakers to really make the audience feel exactly what the characters in your film are feeling. And and so I think that's really cool, you know, regardless of how anybody wants to refer to.
Wow, that is a cool experience. And then just quickly, the logistics, can you talk a little bit more about just the logistics of being in that scene and like creating that moment?
I mean, Jenna and I both had to do all of our, as my pup making an appearance, all both had to do all of our, she was actually on the set of that film.
Yeah, she visited set. Yeah.
So I mean, Jen and I both had to do all our own stunts for that film, and we both, you know, actively do that in most of our projects. Jenna is incredible.
That's so crazy. Whoa.
And so they, you know, but the thing is, when you're working at this budget level, I think like especially this particular film, which was like, I think it was like $35,000. There's just a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of corners end up getting cut, and they shouldn't. And Damien and I are very, I love the Pat's making an appearance. Damien and I are very open about that. There are things there when you're working at that budget level and you're doing things for the first time, it's a learning experience for everybody, you know, and safety needs to always be paramount. And there are things that, you know, we should talk about, you know, before they happen. But for this film, you know, typically when you're doing a scene like that, there's a rig, there's like, or, you know, you're on like a sort of like incline and they're adjusting you. There's all sorts of different ways that you can do it.
There's usually a stunt coordinator.
Someone being like
there's usually a lot of things that this budget did not allow for, and that's something that, you know, our unions are actively actually right now in negotiations trying to fight for, to make things safer and more equitable for people on sets, especially at these budget levels. But
and there were things that could have been done at that budget level to be more safe that they just didn't know at the time, because you know, like, she's obviously right, but and then also at the same time, we never want to say like, oh well, we don't have to worry about safety because we don't have the money to. Like, safety is just a matter of time and like effort. So
100%.
Sorry, not to negate what you were saying.
No, not at all. I 100%. And I think you know, like, it was a learning experience. You know, all of us were, you know, even though Jen and I had been working consistently, we were still on our first studio films. Like, we were still learning. Was Damien's first feature, he was still learning. And so when we did the scene, I'm not at, you know, there is no rig, so I am actually hanging. It was in a condemned building. It was It was 20 degrees. It just happened to be one of the coldest nights of the year in New York City, because why would we look out?
Of course, like just like a cherry on top of everything else. Like,
no,
just throw that on top of there for fun.
yeah, there was no heat, no running water. And I remember we got there, and we just had those shackles that you actually see in the film. That's actually what I'm hanging from. And the compromise that we came up with, like, you can train your body to be able to do like headstands and things, but you really have to physically prep for that. And if you don't know what you're prepping for, you can't. And so then you can risk seizure. So the compromise that we came to was that we would do hang upside down for 42-second intervals, where we'd have a timer, because it would take too long to take me out of the shackles in between. So I was with my legs in the air on my back on a platform, and they would have the timer go, and they'd have me reverse crunch down. Damien would yell action. We'd get what we could. At around like the 35-second mark, someone would yell time, we'd cut, and then they'd hoist me back up onto the platform. And we did that all night. That was the only thing we shot. And I remember when we finished, we were on the Staten Island ferry going home, David and I, and he had the black, because there was no water, so we just had to like baby wipe off. So he had the black under his eyes, and I had like the blood still in my hair, and I was like stained pink, and I had on, it was so cold, I had on a bathrobe over my clothes and then my winter jacket, and we were just standing there staring straight ahead, like not saying anything, just exhausted. And it was like it was an overnight, so it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and people were getting on the ferry to go to like Wall Street and like work, and like we were just like staring there, but nobody
just
said
another
anything.
New York City day, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's New York.
At all.
It's New York. Nobody cares.
They're like, I've seen weirder shit. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody was phased at all. But yeah, I mean, it was very dangerous. And you know, I could have gotten hurt. So and I did have to have, you know, a minor medical procedure after. So you know, I was always so, and you know, I think we're very lucky that it went the way that it did. And you know, I think we have you know, all learned and grown, and like honestly, that's the best outcome you can ask for in that situation. You know, it did what it did, and obviously it's incredibly powerful, and it is almost this kind of performance art, but I do not encourage anybody to try without the supervision safety professionals.
The takeaway should definitely be that there were definitely, like you found out from talking to that doctor afterwards, if I remember correctly, that there were ways that could have been executed to make that a less dangerous experience for the same amount of money. So, you know, the takeaway should not be do whatever you have to for your film. The takeaway should be like, make sure.
Please
you know,
be safe and think about your actors, and like make sure that you're taking care of their flesh prisons. Like these are important to us.
I love that.
That's all we got.
Yeah, but it's not. I'm super proud of the work that Jen and I did on the film. I wouldn't rate it, I think. But yeah, I think we learned, you know, luckily that's all that happened, and we learned. And the takeaway going forward, is please prioritize safety before everything else on your sets.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and then Jenna, you were tied up for those scenes, right? You were tied up, and I read that you said don't release me between takes, right? You were tied up the whole time. Can you talk more about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was a choice as opposed to the time constraints that Katie was under. For me, it was just like, I want to genuinely feel as though I'm actually tied up and that I actually don't have the ability to move, because I think that will inform my performance. And especially because we were on a time crunch as well. So for me, it was a choice. It didn't have to be that way. It was just something that I wanted to use to inform my performance. I did have the luxury of being right side up. If I was upside down, that would have been a very different conversation, because, you know, blood flow works differently that way. But the cool piece of trivia there is that we were not actually in the same room during the filming of either of those scenes because of those filming schedules. So they filmed her entire upside down bonanza, and they filmed me reacting to it on completely different days because of our filming schedules.
Okay. Wow. Wait, so
Yeah.
I'm going back to the filming schedules. Is it and like the you two becoming friends? It sounds like were you on set that often together then if your schedules were
No,
so crazy?
there was a little bit of overlap. I think it was the sort of thing where like here was the bulk of my filming and here was the bulk of hers, and in the middle there was a little bit of overlap is what I
Whoa.
remember. And
Yeah.
in those few precious days we were bonding over the tiniest space heater anyone has ever seen.
It's like a fireplace, but smaller and less warm.
Yes.
So, okay, we're gonna do another trivia question here. True or false, Art the Clown is supernatural in origin?
True.
True.
True. All right. Ding, ding,
I don't think
ding.
you know that until the end of ours, but yes, true.
Yes, you do.
It's true.
So what was it like working with Art the Clown himself, with David? I mean, I know that obviously he's not in character the whole time, but what was that experience like for both of you being able to interact with him both out of character, but then in character? Like, what was that experience like with him?
David's great to work with. He that was his first feature too. So it was kind of a fun experience for him because he came from a theater background. So when we were working with him on set, he was like very animated the entire time and performative, which was like kind of fun. And it kind of this like levity, I think, to the set. And I will say, when we did do that scene, and I did not have my hands tied like Jenna did. That was my choice. He was actually really great about like checking in and making sure that I was okay, because he was the closest one to me at any given time. And that's a huge thing when you're working with other actors, is have that kind of comfort level and security. And when we were filming that was definitely there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, especially because that would also, on top of a stunt coordinator, really that sort of scene needs an intimacy coordinator too. But
yeah.
And
that's something that's become more popular recently. Yeah, that wasn't nearly as popular back then.
That's awesome.
So
I mean, I would echo that he was, because people, I'm sure they do this with you too. They ask me very often at conventions what it's like to work with him, and whether he's scary when you're actually, doing the thing. And he's really not at all. Like the moment he opens his mouth, he's very disarming. And
I spoke with him once and I was like, you're just such a kind, it's very weird seeing you out of makeup and being very kind and just a theater kid.
He's a
it's
goofball.
Very fun. It's very funny, but like, wow, he is a goofball.
Yeah, I agree.
I would absolutely win in a fight.
You would have, yes, you would. Yes, you would.
Yeah. It'd be a competition.
Jenna would kick his ass.
Thank you. And I was going to, but then he cheated. We all know about that.
We all know how that went down.
We all know what happened.
Well, my next trivia question then is actually kind of related to David. So, true or false, David Howard Thornton had mime experience before taking on the role of Art?
I'm gonna guess true.
I think true.
It is.
Yeah.
He was a mime. Yeah. He did miming, and that was one of the reasons why they did like I think that was one of the reasons like the mime makeup too, because of him having the mime experience, which I just
the makeup was on our character when it was a different actor.
Yeah, that's right. It was a different actor.
Because it was a
getting my trivia Terrifier trivia mixed up. Good lord.
Because in between All Hallows Eve and Terrifier, Art like grows a foot and loses like 50 pounds.
I know he's supernatural. Like
I haven't seen. I have to watch the shorts. I have not seen them. I have to watch them. That's so funny.
I know.
Yeah, but and I know that he had like a background of physical, like I don't know if it's clowning or the like physical acting. I can't remember the word for it, but that sort of thing. Because I remember he was talking about how he looks up to creature actors like Doug Jones. And then what was funny is that I then left Terrifier and then immediately went and worked with Doug Jones, who's made a career out of doing that sort of thing.
So cool. So I am curious how being in Terrifier has impacted your lives, like both from your career perspective and also from like your personal lives and interacting with fans. Like what has the impact of this film really been on you? And Catherine, I'll start with you.
I mean, It's been such an interesting build, right? It's a very different experience, I think, for the actors on the first film, the actors on the second film, because
Yes.
we had no idea what we were doing. Like it was what we were creating, we were just making like weird. And Damien and I have talked about this a
for
lot.
the love of the game.
We had no idea what we were doing. By the time it was such this like build, right? That like happened where there was like this rumbling that in the one festival that it played about like where it was like taking, like how it took a lot of risks, right? And then the Lincoln Center thing happened. And then we get this Netflix deal, and all of a sudden it's everywhere, right? And then we're getting, and I remember walking around New York City and like looking into bars and it's just on, and everyone's like freaking out. And like I remember and then like I slowly remember like seeing the fan art start to come in and getting the convention offers and like all of the costumes and the fandom, and like that was like over like the period of like a couple years, because it was
years.
By the time, it was a slow build, right? I remember that.
Very, very slow.
Where the second, when Damien went to crowdfund for the second film, they made their goal in like 4 days or whatever. And it was something crazy like that. And so all the actors who came on the second film, they knew what they were walking onto, they knew what this was, and this was already a big thing. We truly had no idea. So it's been this like whirlwind that's like, we never expected to like impact our lives in the way that it has. And I think I'm super grateful, for the community and the fans, and like that has like kind of rallied around us in support, because that's such a crazy thing. And the fact that people care at all about the work you're doing as an actor and a filmmaker is huge, but it's interesting because, and I think Jenna will echo this, you have this like niche world that very much knows so much about you and about these films and about your life and about your genre work. And then you have your other world as a filmmaker that doesn't overlap with that at all and exists kind of in its own realm. So like some people are like, when you do a project, they're like, they know Terrifier, they know all of this, they're like very excited. And then there are other projects where they have no idea what you're talking about. And they have no, like this like fandom thing. They're just like, what? Who are you? It's like, and so it's like, it's kind of this nice, in my opinion, duality to be able to have both, where it's like, you can go and we can like celebrate what it is to be a genre filmmaker and have that world, and then we can also like go and live our regular lives as creatives and filmmakers where they don't. It's kind of, honestly, it's like a little bit of the best of both worlds. I think if we were exclusively one or the other, it wouldn't be as fun.
Okay, that makes sense. And then Jenna, what about you? Same question.
Yeah, I do definitely echo that. I mean, it is funny that like all the people that got involved in the second movie knew that they were walking into an established franchise with a built-in fan base. Whereas we were like, this is just some guy in a basement, and hopefully we don't get murdered in real life. And the slow build was I think made it easier to like digest as it was happening. And I certainly didn't think it was going to blow up in the way that it did, but I do echo the sentiment that it is very cool that it's to be like known and recognized in this very niche way, and then at the same time outside of that world have relative anonymity or be known for very, very different things. Like I feel as though the Venn diagram of like people who have seen Terrifier and people who have seen my TEDx talk are just two separate circles.
And that's what we call range, though.
Thank you. Let's call it that. I love that. So like it's cool in a lot of ways, because I genuinely love horror as a genre, and but then at the same time, it's not, in any way doesn't interrupt and only sort of adds to life at the same time. And I also have the luxury of like shaving my head for a movie, and so I don't look anything like the character anymore.
Well, and also Jenna, you are starring and you wrote a movie called Faceless After Dark that is kind of inspired by your time with Terrifier. Can you tell us a little bit about this project?
Katie is also in it. Someone has a cameo.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so in all of genre film, especially in the indie world, but also in the bigger budget world as well, and also in film in general, not even just genre film, there's things that we all now know about that we're all working to progress and change. There's a lot of pay inequity of women getting paid, sorry, men getting paid more than women, white people getting paid more than global majority people, things like that. There's these sort of hierarchies that we all are working on breaking down that are very, very prevalent, especially I think in the indie world, of, you know, safety issues. There's the element of like parasocial relationships of, you know, when we with social
Ah,
media, we feel like we're really close to people that we recognize from the media that we consume, and sometimes we feel too familiar with them, and in ways that are sometimes really wonderful and connective, and sometimes are inappropriate. Um, yeah, and so with all of that, and then it's also like, you know, there's a matter of like finding your voice of when is it okay to speak up. And like there are times on Terrifier when me now would have spoken up and said, hey, like let's pause for a second, and then I just didn't have the confidence in the same way that I do now. um so yeah, Faceless After Dark is meant to be, the pitch that I like to give is if Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver were in Promising Young Woman. So it's it's the idea that, like, you know, because there are also a lot of people I think that perceive us as being very successful in ways that are not necessarily reflected in our like bank accounts or in like our abilities to get health insurance. And like in a lot of ways we are very successful, and I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we're both very grateful for all of that, but not as much of it comes from Terrifier as a lot of people would think. Like we both have entire
yeah,
careers outside of Terrifier that we're really proud of as filmmakers and as actors and stunt performers.
yeah.
And so there's kind of like a misconception of what it's actually like versus the experience. And then on top of that, you have with social media and with hustle culture, there's this pressure to seem successful all the time, even if you're struggling with mental illness, for example. And then, you know, things like conventions, like I love conventions, and they're a lot of fun, and it's an amazing way to like connect with people and meet people. And at the same time, it's one of the only ways that a lot of people who work in genre work can actually get paid adequately for the work that we've done, because sometimes there are discrepancies in what we're owed on the back end for things, and some production companies are shadier about it than others. And I'm not going to name any names, but these are all very real things that a lot of people deal with but don't really talk about. And there's a pressure to seem like everything is fine and that we're all very successful, even when at a lot of times I think a lot of us need help. And especially, you know, under a crumbling capitalist society like we're in now, I think way more people are closer to snapping than we'd like to admit. And I really don't think it takes much. And I think that sometimes some people are one notification away of like, oh, your local Target just got shut up from snapping, and wanting to feel like we have some sense of control, or like we can do something about all the injustice that we're surrounded with.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's playing at Grimfest, and we'll be playing at many other places. So everyone keep an eye out for all the more information about that.
Yes,
And
we have
so
a very exciting premiere that we'll be able to announce soon. Yes.
well, and so Jenna, you mentioned the work that you both have done. I want to hear more about what you want people to watch that you've done recently, that you've worked on, that you've created. I want you to give you the floor for some plugs about work that you've worked on since Terrifier that you want people to see, recent, however you want to. And Catherine, I'll start with you. Is there anything you want to plug, people watch of yours?
Oh gosh. I do have things coming out. I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not.
Okay.
I'm very proud of this film, Do Not Watch. That is the same team, and it's kind of genre adjacent. That is the same team from Mass, which was a beautiful, beautiful film
Oh,
directed
yes.
by fans. That is not a genre film, but was nominated for a BAFTA and is incredible. I also just wrapped a really great project that is genre based that hopefully I'll be able to talk about a little bit more. I am particularly excited about Faceless because I think Jenna took some really incredible risks with it, and I'm really honored that she allowed me to come on that journey with her. And personally, when we filmed that, you know, a lot of it was happening during the pandemic, and there I was going on my own personal, you know, healing journeys, and that's the first time I think anyone's really captured me in that moment and who I am now, or at least starting to be who I am now on camera. And I'm really grateful that that's like cemented there. So I'm excited about Faceless, and I'm excited about what happens with it and when they can announce where it will premiere. I'm really excited about it.
And then Jenna, what else do you have besides Faceless After Dark? Obviously,
yeah,
what else?
I can't wait for people to see Faceless After Dark. I'm really, really excited for people to see that. Renfield is on streaming and DVD now, so if you haven't seen that, please, by all means, it's a great time.
Amazing.
It's so fun. Read my review on Dread Central. I really liked it, everybody.
So good.
Thank you. Yay. Yeah, that was a ton of fun to work on. I'm glad that people seem to enjoy it. But that's out in a more accessible way now. I have some things coming up that I'm really excited to film. Some like action stuff that I'm acting in and doing stunts on that I can't wait for. And I just wrapped on Bad Boys 4. I don't know when that comes out, but I'm in it.
Oh yeah. All right, and then let's wrap this up with one final trivia question. I think we know the answer, but so how many films so far has Art the Clown appeared in?
Do the shorts count?
Yes, they do.
4. 5.
It's 5. Jenna's correct. There's 2
Jenna's
shorts. 2 shorts.
Well, I only knew about the one short, but you earlier mentioned that there were 2 shorts.
Yes, I was wondering. I gave away an
that.
answer. Hopefully, I'll see if they have.
There's 2 shorts.
Terrifier, yeah, there's the Ninth Circle, Terrifier, All Hallows Eve, and then there's Terrifier and the Terrifier 2. I know. I didn't know there were 2 shorts again until
Wait,
today.
is Art in the Ninth Circle short?
That's what I've heard and what I found. I believe he is.
Okay. Because the fun fact, when Damien and I met, which neither of us remember how this happened, but I was supposed to be in the feature version of the Ninth Circle, and then that didn't end up happening. And so he was like, "Do you want to be in this instead?" And this was Terrifier. The this of it all.
The this of it all. Well, on that note, Jenna and Catherine, thank you so much for sharing so much about your experience with Terrifier. Everybody, Terrifier is in theaters again on July 19th, so get those tickets if you want to see it. Art on the big screen once again. And again, both of you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks. Great.